So what it's like for you, man? You've done 10 years. You're on your third tour of duty.
Well, I probably mentioned this before, but you seen the gray hairs in my beard?
No, I can't see any, man.
I shaved it so you can't see it.
Not like mine did.
It's getting, it's a long time to be in the space. A really long time. And in fact, you almost don't see many people last that long because like they either made a lot of money or most of them didn't make a lot of money. They sold. That's what I think is a funny thing about OGs is everyone assumes they're like billionaires.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, most sold, and I did not, but most sold when Bitcoin hit 1,000 because they had and this is a true story of a friend of mine. He had 1,000 Bitcoin. He never really believed. He's from the 13 era. Never really believed. He's kind of into it. Not really though. And so when it hit 1,000, he sold it all because he was a millionaire.
All of it.
Well, he's a millionaire for the first time and his family's not from wealth.
Uh-huh.
And so they don't understand that $1 million isn't like, retirement. They're a millionaire now and they're maybe the wealthiest person that they know. Because Bitcoin didn't attract the super wealthy or the high income folks or anyway, it just attracted a wide variety of people, but a lot of them were kind of tinkerers, torrenters, buying stuff in Silk Road, engineers. So it wasn't necessarily like a, white collar, high income sort of like group. And a lot of them sold because they one, never truly believed in it, and two, they had made money that they thought was life changing. For me, I was like, well, there's the only time I'd ever even consider it is Bitcoin has to hit trillions in market cap where it starts to touch my investment thesis of gold that you would even want to consider that. I still want to hodl for forever. But if you were someone who wanted to take money off the table, that's what you would do. Is like you enter your investment thesis and like, why would you sell at any point between now and when Bitcoin becomes digital gold? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. My maybe it's my age, but my goals have changed as well. Like, of course, like anyone younger in my 20s, I wanted to be rich. I want to be a millionaire. And now it's like, actually, no, like an old man, I want longer term security and control of my time. Buying stuff never really makes you happy. Things, I mean, some do, like, yeah, but it's more about longer term security and control of time.
Yeah, I think this is like a good journey into like long term hodling, like the mindset. What's kind of funny is like I don't really consider any of my Bitcoin money. It's my Bitcoin, and I'm not selling it. So it's like that's where people have criticized me for lending. But I'm like, if I never want to sell, then what am I supposed to do? I can't have a time preference of 0 and then just die. And I need to utilize them at some point, but I don't ever want to sell them. And so that's like my method of like taking some risk and taking that and living a lifestyle. But it's funny because I don't really consider it my money. It's just I've hodled so long that it's there, but I don't touch it. Like I'm not going to sell it. It's not like I think of it as like an active pool of wealth that I can go use for anything else. Like dollars in my bank account. Sure. I'm like, okay, cool. I can go do this with that or that with that. I can go buy this investment or that investment or buy this home or something like that. But with Bitcoin, I don't think about it like that at all. It's just like, I'm never touching this, and it's a sizable amount, but I'm not ever going to touch it.
Fair play, man.
But yeah, I mean, the long-term hodling though, it just kind of changes. A lot of Bitcoiners have talked about time preference, like long-term hodling and time preference. It does change that to some extent. And a lot of people, when they're younger, never really saved any money. So Bitcoin may be their first time like saving and investing in general. I think hodl is a bigger philosophy than just Bitcoin. It's a lifestyle. It's an investing lifestyle that everyone should have. All the great investors have a hodl mindset. Active day trading is almost impossible to win unless you are one of the great hedge funds or something and you have information no one else has. Mm-hmm. But being a small investor, your best chance is to buy and hodl. You have reduced fees, you reduce your time preference, and sometimes, depending on the asset, it compounds. And so I think that like that sort of mindset has bled over into other investments. Because Bitcoin isn't my only investment. I haven't sold any, but I still make money doing other things, and I need to have something else outside of Bitcoin. Otherwise, it's been 10 years that I've followed Bitcoin. I need to own some other stuff, like a home someday. I've only rented my entire life. These are, I think, reasonable things to own as other investments.
And now you can get yourself a Bitcoin mortgage. which is
Yes.
super interesting.
Yeah, the Bitcoin mortgage stuff is super cool. And in terms of like the long-term hodler financial toolkit, you've got all these different ways where like you've hodled for a long time. Well, what do? You can lend it out. You can write covered calls. You can borrow against it, like Unchained Capital, or let in. And then there's also like Bitcoin mortgages, which there's Ledin came out with one. And who are the other companies?
I know Arbor, because we've got one coming because we spoke to Bill about it.
There's a couple now.
Yeah.
And so the Bitcoin mortgages are really cool. And I actually went through this process very recently about trying to get a mortgage. So mortgage companies don't care how much assets you have at all. They want to see income.
Yep.
And they want to see stable income. They want to see income over the last 2 years. And also you need 2 years worth of business income. And so they take somewhat of an average of that. Then they take your monthly mortgage payment and divide your income, to have that as the numerator, income as the denominator. And it gives them a debt to income ratio. They don't care if you have 100 million in the bank. That will not help you qualify for a mortgage. It was the most bizarre process I've ever gone through where I'm like, in these couple of accounts, like I'll identify one Bitcoin one, like the ones I use to earn a yield. Those are public. I publicly talk about those. I'm like, there's this many BTC there. And I'm like, here's also my brokerage account. And, that cumulative value is greater than the mortgage's value. And they're like,
Don't care.
we don't care. I'm like, I could literally pay off the mortgage tomorrow. And they're like, we don't care.
But if you have a letter from an employer that says you earn X thousand a month, even though you could lose that job.
You could lose that job
like
tomorrow.
That. Yeah.
Of course.
It's ludicrous.
It's ludicrous. And so hence the Bitcoin mortgage product for Bitcoiners like myself who have really struggled to get to get a mortgage in general. I did get qualified. I found one place that will qualify my Bitcoin as income.
Interesting.
They'll divide it by 84. So you take your total sum of Bitcoin, you have to have it at a custodial exchange. They don't touch it. They just verify it once and you can move it back off.
Interesting.
So they don't custody the asset, which is really cool.
Why 84? Is that what they think the maximum drawdown is?
7 years. It's some of their risk calculations of like I forget what the term is called, but they actually do it with traditional mortgages too. But they normally divide by 360, which is the total number of months for the mortgage. This one, which is like basically makes any investment worthless because you divide it by 360 and how much is that per month?
Well, the really interesting thing about the Ledin product, because I saw it the other day, is that I imagined when the first mortgage products would come out, it would be, all right, you want to buy, I don't know, say $1 million house. You're going to require $2 million of Bitcoin locked up, having the 50% LTV, right? And that's what I assumed. But they're not. They're doing a combination. They're taking the value of the home and then part of the Bitcoin. So you can get a much larger home with a smaller amount of Bitcoin as you've got the deposit. And the good thing about that, it gives you can use your asset to get a larger property. The interesting thing is they're essentially going to have to get into the world of foreclosures potentially.
Yeah, so some of these details are still kind of being worked out. Like, I don't believe the Ledin product is live yet.
It's on their website.
It's on their website, but I think it's more of like request to like
try it
out. And I believe it's coming out first in Canada, and it's not available in the US yet because I hit them up and asked.
Right.
They're a sponsor of mine, by the way, full disclosure. They're a sponsor of mine, and I've tried out their product, and I've looked at some other ones as well. So with these Bitcoin mortgages, there's a couple types. The one you talked about, I think, is really cool, where you have the mortgage component. So they have to work with an underwriter for that. And then the loan is for your down payment. So down payments can be range from 4% to 20%. Depends on the property, depends on your risk. And so let's say it's 20%. They'll have you post Bitcoin as collateral, and then they'll essentially, pay that mortgage. They'll pay the down payment, and then they'll also bundle that with that mortgage, which is really cool. Some of these companies are also claiming that when you borrow against your Bitcoin to pay the down payment, that it's not margin and that you won't get margin called, which is a little bit mind blowing because I'm like, well, how would you do that? And I don't think Ledin's product does it. I believe that there is a margin call. So what they do is they also own the title to the home, where if they own the title to the home too, like they're part of the mortgage underwriting process as well. To where instead of like outsourcing the mortgage underwriting process, they somehow have a lien or ownership over the home as well. So they have your home and your Bitcoin as collateral and so they're like, well, even if the Bitcoin value went to zero, the home value we hypothesize might not. So you wouldn't get margin called on your Bitcoin, which is kind of cool.
Well, it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Now, typically when I dug into how these work, so I don't think Ledin doesn't do that. Ledin, you can still get margin called. What I realized how some of these work, though, I mean, they're taking your Bitcoin and they're doing stuff with it, of course, to earn a yield on it. And to make, because they gave dollars to this other company and they had to borrow those dollars at a certain cost.
Yeah.
So they have to have some sort of way to plug that gap. So Bitcoin mortgages, I think, are a huge financial innovation in the space. Really powerful for Bitcoiners. It does mean locking up your Bitcoin with someone, and somewhere we're gonna have to trust them for a very long time. That's a big if, and that's a big risk. And with some of them, I try to configure a custom arrangement where I'm like, how about I go do it at Anchorage? And then we have a tri-party agreement where they can liquidate it at a certain level because I don't trust you, frankly. Like over 30 years, that's a long time. That's a normal mortgage term. So yeah, that's the tricky part is you've got them holding your Bitcoin for a very long time. Depends on how they construct it. If there are margin calls, well, you better make sure that you don't hit that. Because if you get margin called, you could not only lose your Bitcoin, but you could lose your home too.
Yeah.
Which is like a double whammy.
But these products are going to mature. They're going to figure them out.
They're going to figure them out. I think it's a huge innovation. It's needed because a lot of Bitcoiners don't want to sell. They don't want to sell their Bitcoin and buy a home, but they want a home. I'm like the perfect ideal candidate. And so for me, it's just kind of figuring out like which one's the right one for me. And unfortunately, Ledin's not available in the US. I know those guys well enough to where I'd feel somewhat comfortable. 30 years is still a long time though. I'd prefer something where there's like a custodian that holds on to it. Even a custodian though, better hope they don't get 6102'd, having the state ask them to seize your assets. So there's a lot of risk with this. So I think if you're listening to this, it does solve a problem, but it has inherent risks with how you do it.
It's just a different risk model.
Of course.
You got to be fully aware of it, understand what you're signing up to. But maturity in the market for financial products from around Bitcoin is certainly something which is going to help take it forward. Absolutely.
I think the maturation of Bitcoin financial products has been fantastic. We've got like Bitcoin mortgages. We have lending out your Bitcoin, borrowing against your Bitcoin. These didn't even exist before 2018. Mm-hmm. Like that was a whole different era back then. You remember this. I mean, these were new innovative products. You've also got some that are like selling puts or selling calls as a yield generation strategy and doing that in an automated way, like atomic finance. Like those are really cool too. Of course, people should know the risk that they're getting into when they do this. But with every investment, including hodling, which is going long, it comes with risks. It's just understanding those risks and which ones you think are worth it.